Hello, and welcome to my channel. If you were here yesterday for True Crime Tales, I'm not gonna lie to you, I forgot to film it, and edit it, and post it. So, there's that. Anyway, today is... what is today? Wednesday. Wednesday. So we'll be doing Missing and Murdered today. It is a sad story, kind of a short story. You know, unfortunately when you have like the missing and murdered cases, there's usually not a lot of information because they don't know who killed them. Sometimes they don't know how they were killed. But yeah, this one is from 1981. So let's get into it. Brenda Marie Gerow, previously known as Pima County Jane Doe, was a formerly unidentified American murder victim whose body was found on April 8th of 1981. In late 2014, a photograph of a facial reconstruction of the victim was made public that led to Gerow's identification the next year. She had been buried under a headstone with a placeholder name of Jane Doe with the phrase UNK 1981. UNK means unknown. Gerow's body remained unidentified for 34 years until it was announced that her remains had been positively identified. Gerow, the oldest of her siblings, disappeared in July 1980 after leaving with John Jack Kohlheiser, her boyfriend at the time. So, his name was John, but he goes by Jack. She had worked at a convenience store and as a bartender in an establishment in Dracut, Massachusetts, often frequented by bikers. She remained in contact with family and had at one time called home stating she would be returning, yet she never did. Her family attempted to report her missing, yet local police declined to cooperate due to the fact that she was an adult when she vanished. And I do understand that because, you know, adults, they go missing all the time, and sometimes they're missing, and sometimes they just don't want to be found. But I really do think that, like, states need to step up and make, like, better laws surrounding missing adults, especially, like, because, you know, like, we have, like, the endangered elderly, and we have endangered children, and we have amber alerts, and we have silver alerts, but there's not really anything for, like, the adults in between those age groups, and I really think there should be something, because sometimes they really are missing, and they are found way too late. The body of a white female was found in the desert. It's always the desert. On April 8th, 1981, in Tucson, Pima County, Arizona, near Houghton Road and Interstate 10. Her remains were found by hunters driving in the desert who saw a jacket hanging from a tree and then looked through the area and discovered her body lying on the ground. The victim was a young adult between 18 and 22 years of age. The autopsy determined she died 1.5 to 2 days before her body was discovered, and cause of death was strangulation by ligature. She had been severely beaten, in addition to being sexually assaulted. When found, her body was in an advanced state of decomposition, rendering her facially unrecognizable and her eye color undetermined. The pathologist who examined her was able to determine she had a light-skinned complexion as well as long, light brown to blonde hair. The victim also had a noticeable white spot on one of her upper front teeth. She was approximately 5'2" to 5'3" and weighed around 100 to 110 pounds at the time of her death. Additional evidence at the scene may have been blown away due to winds. Her body was clothed in denim jeans, white socks with pink pom-poms, a white bra, blue panties, brown suede shoes, and a unique blouse that was navy blue with puffy red floral sleeves. A denim jacket was found hanging in brush near the body. The crime scene was photographed and law enforcement flew over the area to take further photographs and to look for any additional clues. Body decomposition was not advanced enough to completely alter her fingerprints, which were eventually taken. Dental information was obtained along with, years later, her DNA. A DNA profile from another individual was extracted from her clothing in 2006, which allowed for a DNA profile of a potential suspect to be created after sample analysis in 2007. At the time the victim was found, authorities in Tucson were unable to obtain fingerprints. In an effort to obtain her fingerprints, the victim's hands were removed from the body and sent to the FBI. Now, it didn't go into, like, deep detail on this, but from what I understand, they put it in, like, formaldehyde or something like that, and that, like, rehydrates the skin, which makes it a little easier to get fingerprints from. It is sad, though, because, like, you know, if you found her family and they wanted to, you know, give her a funeral, you really wouldn't be able to have, like, an open casket because, like, they literally cut off the hands. And it's just really sad because, like, that should not happen. I don't know if it gets reattached. I've never looked into that. Maybe I should, but I don't know if they get, like, reattached or if they're just left off. But, just thinking that that's really sad. While the FBI was successful in getting fingerprints, they did not match any missing persons on file or anyone interested in a crime. The case was compared to several missing person cases, but all were ruled out. To investigators, the style of some of her clothing suggested she could have been involved in the local county fair that had occurred at the time of her murder. Images of the victim's clothing were featured on websites, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children posters, and in news reports in an effort to identify her. The victim had been walking or running through a wooded area before her death, as suggested by scratches on her body. I'm assuming that if she was not looking where she was going, she was probably running from something, which is sad. Her final moments were probably terrifying, and that's really, really sad, and it's hard to think about, but that is unfortunately the sad reality. A crude sketch was created of the victim following her discovery. It was released to the public on television and in the newspapers, yet the victim was not recognized by anyone in the area. After a 2012 exhumation of the body, the victim's face was digitally reconstructed after her skull was examined via a CT scan. The scan was sponsored by the NCMEC in order to create an approximation of facial features and appearance when the victim was alive. Different theories regarding the life and demise of the victim existed. Investigators theorized she was a runaway as a child before she became an adult, had possibly been estranged from family, had been murdered elsewhere and dumped at a different scene, or had hitchhiked to Tucson from another location. Early in the investigation, it was theorized she could have been a victim of the then unidentified Golden State Killer, who had moved south since his criminal career began in the mid-1970s. They did eventually catch that guy via DNA. Fuck that guy, to be quite fucking frank. In 1995, while building a case against Kohlhauser for assault charges, a photograph of a young woman with light hair holding a bouquet was found in his possession. In late 2014, police announced that they believed the photograph was connected to the case of Pima County Jane Doe and released it to the public. The woman in the photo resembled the victim's reconstruction and her physical description. The photograph is believed to have been taken between 1979 and 1981, also fitting the time frame in which Jane Doe was found. Kohlhauser refused to identify the woman in the photograph because he's a bitch. The then unidentified woman's photograph was circulated to the public in late 2014 after authorities made the connection between it and the reconstruction. Authorities noted that the background scenery appeared to be from somewhere in the eastern part of the county, possibly a former camping area in Tingsboro. If I said that wrong and you know I said it wrong, I'm sorry. Massachusetts. On December 23, 2014, her brother Bill Gerow Jr. received a notification from police that the female in the picture could be his sister. Gerow hadn't been seen since 1980, when she was 20, after she left the state voluntarily with Kohlhauser, with whom she was in a relationship. She had reportedly met Kohlhauser and stated that she had called him around 2 to 3 weeks afterwards while in New Mexico. After this, she was never heard from again, because they never are, although her family continued efforts to locate her. Gerow could not have officially been reported missing because she was over the age of 18 and apparently left on her own accord. There's no apparently left of her own accord. She did. And it is unfortunate that that alone is probably what would have stopped her from being reported as a missing adult. But I still think that, like, if you don't know for sure that they went of their own free will, you should still be allowed to file a report on an adult, because you don't know. You don't know if that adult is safe. You don't know if they're in a safe situation. I have a lot of, like, discontent for the fact that you cannot file a missing report on an adult. Like, I have an adult daughter who lives with us, and if she didn't come home for 2 weeks and I called the police and was like, hey, this isn't normal, my kid never came home, you better damn well come take that fucking report. Like, what? They're still technically young enough to do dumb shit and for things to happen to them. And the reality is, serial killers are not always picky. Sometimes it's crime of opportunity, sometimes it's just shitty people, sometimes it's bad boyfriends or bad girlfriends, because women can be violent too, and abusive. But there should definitely be, like, a system in place to report missing adults, not elderly, not children, but like adults. So like between the ages of like 20 and 40, there should be a system in place for that, because well, it may seem to you as a cop not out of the ordinary, because, you know, adult children go missing all the time. A family member is going to know. If that's not normal, they're going to know, especially a mother, and you should allow that to be reported. And I don't understand why there's so much difficulty with getting adults reported missing. This is why so many cases from, you know, the 1980s and 1970s go unsolved, because it was so hard to get them reported as missing if they were over the age of 18, because by law, at 18, they can leave if they want to. And that's fine. I get that. I understand that. But sometimes those people are actually in danger, and there needs to be a better system in place for actual adults and not just children and the elderly. Keep the elderly, definitely, because I've got a mom with dementia and I'd be devastated if she got lost and nobody helped me look for her. Keep it for children, obviously, because people are fucking gross and weird and do weird things to children, so definitely need that system. But there needs to be a system in place for actual adults. Whether or not you know for sure if they're in danger, there should be something in place that allows them to be stopped at like a traffic stop or something and run through the system, and then let the family know, hey, we found them. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to be found, but we did find them and they are okay. Because sometimes, and also mental illness is a real thing, and people sometimes go missing because they're mentally ill and they're having an episode. There's just, I don't know. I hate the way this system works for adults, to be quite frank. Carl Hauser has past ties to Arizona and is believed to have murdered his wife, Diane Von Reith, in 1995, because, probably. He was living under an assumed name at the time of his wife's death. Don't they always? Although Van Reith's body has never been found, again, as usual. Carl Hauser was later convicted of her murder in 1999. Other events in Carl Hauser's criminal history include being convicted for the 1974 murder of Paul Chapman and being indicted for the attempted murder of a man in 1979. Now, see, if I called you as a policeman, I was like, hey, my 20-year-old daughter left with this man, and he gives me bad vibes, and you search up this man, and you come across the fact that he has committed 2 murders, and attempted 1 other murder, you better put on some kind of alert for my child. I don't care if she's 50 or 20 or 12. There better be something done. Because, like, his criminal history enough should have been enough for people to be like, this doesn't look good, and he probably killed her. Let's be for real right now. Following his indictment for the 1979 case, Carl Hauser jumped bail and fled after being released from jail. Also, usual. When he married Diane Von Reith in Nevada, he used a false name to avoid being discovered. They always get caught, though. Carl Hauser was sentenced to 20 years in prison in Arizona following his conviction for second-degree murder. 20 years, two murders, and an attempted murder, and all he got was 20 years, and probably a third murder, because let's be real, I would bet money that one day we will find out this motherfucker murdered Brenda, too. Okay? Like 90% sure that is coming. And all he got was 20 years. 2 murders, an attempted murder, and most likely a third murder. And he got 20 years. There are people in prison serving more for marijuana. Arizona prison records show that he completed his sentence on May 8, 2019. Yes, you heard that correctly. This fucker is walking around free. On September 28, 2015, information was released that the body of the unidentified victim had been formally identified as Gerow in April 2015, and that her body would be returned to family members. The identification was made through comparison of the family's DNA compared to that of the victim. Gerow's father, William Sr., stated that he did not understand any possible motive for the death of his daughter. He didn't need a motive, he's just a fucking douche, apparently. Carl Hauser is considered a person of interest in the murder because he did it. Police have asked for information from anyone who knew Carl Hauser and Gerow and the in the late 1970s or early 1980s. After the family received the remains, the body was cremated. In 2017, Gerow's and Van Reeth's cases were featured on the second episode of Who Killed Jane Doe on Investigation Discovery. Her brother and father provided interviews. I'm quite impressed that her father's lived that long. I mean, if she was born in 1981 and was 20, I mean, he'd be like well into his like 80s and 90s. But yeah, well, I guess she wasn't born in 1981. She was 20. So, yeah. I'm impressed that Dad lived that long. I have so many questions now. I don't know how old that man would be, but you know he's got to be definitely older. But so you may not be alive now, but he was alive in 2017. And they claim it's unsolved. But let's be real, the boyfriend probably did it because, like I said, two murders and an attempted murder. Odds are he's probably the one who killed her too because, like, she knew something or she was part of something and he was like, the less witnesses, the better. Because that's just how it works. I hate people. However, that is the story of Brenda Gerow. Much love to her family. It's not easy to lose a sibling, child, mother, whatever the case may be. But that is her story, and it is a very sad story. And technically, yes, the case is still unsolved, but I'm positive the boyfriend did it. Anyway, that being said, y'all make good choices. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and be cautiously kind to others, or don't. And I will see you all later. Bye.